Hi, today I'm going to read The Christmas Blizzard, and it's by Helen Ketterman and illustrated by James Warhola. And it is a fun and imaginative story about a year that it seemed almost too hot and then too cold for Christmas. Once again, it's called The Christmas Blizzard. Well, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Bethany's mom. This book is dedicated to William and Dorothy Tye by Helen Ketterman, and James Warhola dedicates it to Katie, Abby, and Donnie. And there's a fun little picture there with the dedication. And let's see if I can find the page. Oh, here it is. It says, Little Sissy McNabb ran up to Maynard Jenkins when he came into the McNabb General Store. Mr. Jenkins! Mr. Jenkins! She cried. The weatherman says we're going to get a blizzard tonight. Humph! Said the old man. That whippersnapper of a weatherman wouldn't know a blizzard if it tipped its hat and introduced itself. The blizzard of 22. Now that was a blizzard to remember. The old man settled on a chair and warmed his hands over the stove. Don't be so all fired anxious, girl, he replied. Learning history takes time. And that's what he told her when she asked, how much did it snow? Well, he's going to tell her. That year, the weather was crazy. It was so cold that when my pappy dropped a sledgehammer, it shattered like glass. The ground cracked too, and pretty deep. Ellie Cogwell says she could see clear through to China. Of course, Ellie was always one for exaggerating. There's the hole. The weather was afflicting other places too. Up at the North Pole, why, it was as warm as Grandma's gravy. Palm trees were sprouting right and left, and it was so hot, Santa's elves weren't in the mood to make toys. There they are. I like the polar bear with sunglasses. And I don't think I'll ever see Santa the same again after that picture. So Santa packed up and moved his whole workshop, elves and reindeer and all. He looked for the coldest spot in the world and ended up settling right here. Said it felt more like the North Pole than the North Pole did. Turned out we almost missed Christmas that year. Cold as it was, it had been as dry as corn shucks since August. Not a cloud in the sky for miles. No rain, no sleet, no snow, not a flake. One day in October, I slipped by Santa's place. I peeked in the window to see if he was making that shiny red sled I wanted. But Santa and his elves weren't doing a thing. Turned out you need more than cold weather to make toys for Christmas. They needed snow, and plenty of it. I looked up at the sky, and what did I see but blue? If I were going to have Christmas at all, I knew I had to do something, and quick. I went to a shack outside of town over by Hatcher's Pond, where old Miss Pendersnarf lived. It was rumored she could cast spells. And I knocked, and the door creaked open. Mrs. Pendersnarf seemed old enough to be Santa's granny. Her hair was piled up like a rat's nest, and she was so squinty-eyed, I couldn't tell for sure if she had eyeballs or not. She looked awful scary. What is it, boy? She croaked. I gathered up my courage and told her why we needed snow. Miss Pendersnarf agreed to help. She pulled bottles of dried herbs off the shelf and stirred them together in a bowl. She lit a match, and the herbs flared up, then fizzled and smoked. Mrs. Pendersnarf smiled a snaggle-toothed grin. There's gonna be a wind, she said. a strong, strong wind. That's all you need, boy. Nature will do the rest. I was halfway home when the wind whipped up. Woo-wee, did that spell work great. It lifted me and blew me all the rest of the way home. That night, the wind howled and whistled, got stronger by the hour. By morning, frozen trees had been shattered into firewood and blown into stacks. By afternoon, rain clouds had swept all the way from Seattle, Washington. And then, as suddenly as the rain had begun, it stopped. But woo-wee, look at that windstorm. Those Seattle clouds were bursting with moisture. I figured it would start right away. Santa and his elves must have thought so too, because they perked up and started cranking out toys. But nature wasn't through with us yet. Those clouds looked heavy, but they didn't do a blessed thing. Later in the evening, in the dead of night actually, I heard a loud crash. Felt just like an earthquake and threw me out of bed. And the racket sounded louder than one of those newfangled jet aeroplanes. I wonder what the sound was. Do you folks know? Come to find out, those clouds had frozen solid. Crashed right to the ground. One of them even squashed the roof of Jed McDonald's barn. It exploded and scattered cows as far as 4 miles away, some up in trees to boot. Jed sure had a hard time collecting those cows. You should have seen this town, girl. Dark, lumpy, frozen clouds were lying all over the ground, and they were as slippery as a weasel in a grease pit, too. It was so slippery, Santa's reindeer wouldn't be able to get off the ground and deliver toys. I had work to do. I decided to force those clouds back up in the sky, so I slid all over town, lighting bonfires with the frozen stacked firewood. Everyone pitched in and helped. Wasn't long before those clouds started thawing out. And when they did, they rose back up in the sky where they belonged. We kept the fires going round the clock till it finally got warm enough to snow. And by George, it snowed like there was no tomorrow. Flakes as big as dinner plates. Flakes as fat as turnips. Flakes rounder than a Thanksgiving turkey. Flakes fluffier than a long-haired barn cat. Why, those Seattle clouds snowed up a blizzard for 2 whole weeks. Woo-wee. Ooh. By the time the snow had ended, the houses were all covered. The doors were snow shut. So we climbed out the chimney and started shoveling. We finished 2 days later, just in time to see the elves load Santa's sleigh on Christmas Eve. Those elves must have worked overtime because I never did see so many toys. Woo, looky there, that's one giant bag. On Christmas morning, I woke up and there, under my Christmas tree, was the red sled I'd asked for. Old Miss Pindersnarf got a sled too, and we had a fine time racing down Dead Man's Hill. We sledded all spring and into the summer. Mrs. Pindersnarf was one bodacious sledder. Here's the Christmas morning. It was because of her that the town got a new name. We had voted to change it from Waterville to Blizzard because of the storm. And on Founders Day, Mayor Butterfrump was making his dedication speech when Miss Pendersnarf came barreling down Dead Man's Hill. She crashed right through the fancy new sign, smashing the B in Blizzard to smithereens. The mayor stayed cool as ice cream. Without blinking an eye, he said, "Welcome to Lizard, Indiana." And it's been that name ever since. See, there we go. Quite a production. Maynard winked at Sissy. "I reckon you've learned enough history for one day, girl. I'm going home to dust off my old sled and oil it up. If we get that pinch of snow your weatherman predicts, I might just test it out." Maynard waved as he disappeared out the door. "See you tomorrow, Sissy, up on Dead Man's Hill." And that is the Christmas Blizzard. Merry Christmas.